We're going to go ahead and call to order the regular board meeting for the Olivos Services Community District for July 10 at 6:03 p.m. June 10, sorry. All right, we need everybody to, oh, I'm sorry, call the order first.
Kennedy?
Yeah.
Director Shayram? Director Parks? Here. Director Palmer via Zoom?
Here.
Are you there?
Here.
Director Nelson? I do not believe is there. Okay, but you're not Director Nelson. There's a delay. All right, so no Director Nelson for the minutes.
Okay. Thank you. All right, can you get everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let me see if I can fit just one view.
Hey, Sam.
No, I guess you have me. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item, which is report about anything not on the agenda. This is for and general. Do you also want to do general? General. Yes. Okay, why don't you go ahead and start?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. Lois, a director, Guy Savage. I sent this email to the board president, but received no response. In 5 a.m., Mr. Savage states, if Michelle and her husband want to put up $5 million or more and make the cost for the same for property owners, he is sure we will listen. I have two specific questions for the board that require an on-record response. First, who does Mr. Savage mean by we? Is he speaking officially on behalf of the board? Second, does it requiring a $5 million financial commitment from the public to be heard constitute a pay-to-play standard for the community? The public deserves transparency, and I look forward to your response. Thank you.
Councilor Miller.
All right. Good evening, board members. President Kennedy and others have spoken urgently about securing funding to move this project toward a Proposition 218 vote. But as someone somewhat familiar with public financing, I feel I need to warn you that litigation risk is completely off-putting to lenders. They will not finance a district if their money will be swallowed up defending against wholly avoidable lawsuits. Unfortunately, this district has been racking up significant litigation exposure over the last couple months. Tonight, I want to address one area of risk: the potential misuse of public funds to advocate for a specific outcome in your upcoming 218 vote. At last week's collection system workshop, a brochure titled A Property Owner's Guide was placed on every chair. Under California law, local agency officers, employees, and consultants are strictly prohibited from spending public funds or staff time to support a ballot measure. A CSD is restricted to providing accurate, fair, and impartial factual information. Legally, any informational pamphlet must present a neutral, balanced analysis, including the consequences of both passing and failing the measure. This brochure created by your Prop 218 committee is not that. It does not inform the public about anything having to do with collection alternatives discussed at the workshop. Instead, it reads like a vote yes campaign piece because it completely suppresses all negative counterfacts. by distributing a document detailing 100% benefit and 0% cost, risk, or private property liability, your Prop 218 committee has created an advocacy piece disguised as a guide. This creates significant exposure. For improper advocacy, individual officials can be held personally, jointly, and severally liable for civil fines up to $1,000 per day, plus treble damages. The FPPC can levy penalties up to $5,000 per violation. Most damaging of all, a taxpayer lawsuit can void the election results entirely, forcing this district to restart this costly process from scratch. Furthermore, if the facts in this guide are found to be inaccurate or misleading, the district could face constitutional property rights challenges and official misconduct claims. I have a partially annotated version of the brochure here, highlighting a few areas of concern, but it's far from exhaustive. I urge the board to review it, consult your legal counsel, and seriously address this potential liability before attempting to take any further steps toward a 218 vote. If I may, I'll give these to the general manager to share with the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Guys, do you have any room? No.
No.
Any others in the room that would, yes, we'll take Matt in the back first.
Yeah, this is a public address.
This is it. This is public comment on anything not on the agenda.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Matt Loudon. I've lived within the boundaries of the special properties district since 1976. I have a feeling for what's going on here. When they had the first meeting up at Olivos School, one of the first questions I asked is, what the people need to know in this district is how much is this going to cost? Is this going to cost $5,000 and $50 a month? Is it going to cost $50,000 and $500? I haven't got that answer until we got some of the information last week. Here's what I found my analysis. I used the baseline number one proposal, which cost $1.2 million. I added 10% for added contingencies, which was recommended in the memorandum. I figured $10 million for solving capacity line expenses, $2 million for water, $2 million minimum for damage repair of existing infrastructure, which was supposed to be the IV1 pipeline system, and 15% for the California waste rock abuse, which you have to budget because it's real. Yeah, examples of that all over the state. Comes out to $78.3 million. I added 10% for inflation costs to get us to the start of construction. Another $7.8 million, which comes out to capital costs of $86.1 million. If you take a AAA 30-year, 4.5%, fully amortized loan to build this project, the interest is going to be $70.7 million, totaling $156.8 million. If you divide that by the 761 EDUs, which I think is horribly flawed, because we have a huge number of Airbnbs within the limits of the special province district, the occupancy of these things is way beyond what you've established. Well, you haven't established anything for EDUs. The ordinance allows for 3 couples. Each of those couples can have 1 couple of guests, and all 6 of those couples can have an unlimited amount of children, which is way beyond 3 people. And I mean, that's hotel numbers. But if you take that, 761 EDUs that you have in the study, and divide the $156.8 million, the cost for EDU is $206,005. That doesn't even go. And if you divide that by 360 months, which is 30 years, that comes out to $572.35. That doesn't include any Prop 218 costs. That includes no annual O&M costs from either of those community service district or the city solid.
That's
And
fine.
no tax assessment. So I've been closing. We're going to be close to $800 a month. That's roughly 20% of what my social security benefit is.
Thank you. Sam, you actually know.
Sam, Los Olivos Cafe, certainly looking at costs is certainly what we're doing and we should be doing. And you're right, we should come up with a monthly thing, but we don't really know until we see if we can get grants or not, which can offset the cost of this whole thing. But what's the alternative? The alternative is you don't do anything. And if you don't do anything, then anybody who has a septic system and it fails, then you got to put in $100,000 a treatment facility in your property, and you got to come up with that $100,000 like right now. You can't put it over 30 years or whatever that is. My business is greatly affected by the septic system. We have huge costs. We're struggling to stay in business in Los Olivos and provide food and a place to go for the community. And having to pump our septic constantly is a real hardship for us to go through. I would strongly support a sewer system, hopefully a gravity-fed sewer system where you can just flush and toilet and forget it. And we need to move forward on this, because doing nothing, but just saying, oh, well, it's too expensive, we can't do anything, it's going to be a lot more expensive per person in the long run.
Do we have any others?
Sam, and, if you could fill out a short card for us, the grants are on the back over there. Where they're right on the table there. That would be great. Just hand it back to us all.
So I was handed this at the beginning of the meeting. It's basically information regarding the fundability list cutoff score of 13 regarding the CWSRF loan application, which you guys just went through, and we scored a 4, which means we failed to get any funding. And I just want to point out one thing. There's a section on fundability, and it says, does this project qualify as a public health project? Well, we've been saying that there's problems with the groundwater. It's a public health issue, correct? Okay. Well, when this was actually returned, it said no. So it says a project is a public health project when the county board of supervisors, city council, or the county health officer has certified that a health problem exists in the state water board or a regional board, water board, has adopted a discharge prohibition, approved a moratorium, adopted a cease and desist order. Alternatively, a project may be a public health project when it is required to comply with a prohibition, posting, limitation, or warning that has been imposed by a responsible health authority, and that the state water board or the regional water board has concurred with the health authority's determination and established a time schedule for correction or elimination of the problem. The applicant must demonstrate a direct connection between the completion of the project and the correction or the elimination of the public health problem. Okay, well, none of this has happened, but we're being told that we have to actually comply and get this done. But we can't check a box and say, yes, this is required to actually help us get funding. So why is that? The next question I have is, we have properties that do not have anything on them. It's just land that people will put crops on. Are those people going to have to pay what you estimate $800 a month just to connect, and they actually have no house, no one's flushing a toilet, no one's using a kitchen on it? That really does not seem right at all. Beyond that, we haven't even talked about having people put an advanced wastewater treatment facility just on instead of their on-site wastewater treatment that they have right now. We could do that for all of the people outside of this commercial core, and it's going to be a lot less expensive than the $200,000+ that this gentleman just said it was going to cost. My mom just had her septic replaced last year for about $30,000. So now you guys are saying that the septic that is perfectly fine that she just replaced, which was, she's in an area that doesn't even have a problem, is that she's now going to have to pay $800 a month. She's going to have to sell her property. And some people here, I bet, will have to sell their homes and move if we move forward with this terribly expensive project.
Thank you. Do we have any other, anyone else like to take public comment about something not on the agenda? Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the public hearing, consideration of the proposed fiscal year 2026-27 budget.
Just a second. Okay, so we're talking about the fiscal year 26-27 budget. This whole process, you know, it is just that, it is a process. We started back in March when I prepared a draft budget, posted online for public review. The finance subcommittee then reviewed it and made comments prior to the regular board meeting back in April. In May, we published a notice, which is required by law, related to the potential adoption at this hearing of a final budget. So here we are, June 10th, to discuss the final budget. So a couple of things that I would point out to your board and the public. So when we talk about our fiscal year runs July 1st to the subsequent June 30th. So July 1st, 2026, and just a couple of weeks until June 30th of next year. What we're seeing, or what I'm seeing in the budget, what I put in the proposed budget, is some carry forward, meaning money that's kind of left over that we didn't spend this year, going into next year. Those are about where we expected and where anticipated. Importantly, we do have some sufficient funds in there to perform some actions without the $1 million we've been talking about to be able to do the design work, and we're going to talk about that later as part of item 8. But there's roughly $100,000 to $150,000 that is kind of unaccounted for in the budget that your board could choose to spend toward an assessment engineer or toward some more actions that Wallace Group could take, that sort of thing. And for this budget, based on our past practices, I projected a $44,000 reserve. Remember, in our case, our budget is all just it's like all in one checking account. We track it by different line items, but it's really at the county just one fund center. That's who holds all of our funds, by the way. When you guys pay your taxes, county holds onto the funds in their treasury. We don't have bank accounts, so it's all there. So all of this discussion is that it kind of sets the foundation for a calendar year 2027 Prop 218 vote. I'd note that, you know, as you go through the budgeting process, you have this discussion with yourself, particularly as a budgeting person, about what do I include in the budget, what don't I include? And this conversation about when to include something as a potential revenue versus not. So for instance, the California State Revolving Fund program might have given us money. I didn't include it because it wasn't in our hands. Just like, as I'll share with you in a little bit, you know, we do have some funds that may be coming, we can get from the county. They're not in our bank account, so I don't include them in the budget. So if I don't have it in my hand, it's not included in the budget. Everything else is kind of projection either based on last year or some sort of a best practice. So looking at the revenue side of things, and you can see here, we really only have 3 kind of buckets of revenues. You know, you've got what's coming in via the special tax assessment. As you can see here, for next year, projecting it to be $295,118. Because our funds are in the county's treasury, we get some interest income next year, just under $7,700. So in total revenues next year, funds that could be spent total around $302,000. Key expenses, and you know, I didn't say it on the last slide, but the left number in blue is what we did in the current fiscal year, or we're projected to do in the current fiscal year. The kind of goldish color on the right is what I'm projecting for next year. So things like memberships, insurance, audits went up significantly because we changed audit companies, and with the consent agenda, I'm going to talk a little bit about our audit firm because our final audit is part of that. Per your board's direction, we did not include anything for monitor well testing. There's been a lot of conversation about that in the past. We've managed to be able to get county funds to help offset that. And so because of your board's input, I did not include anything there. The professional services, dropped way down because that was really just the projection of how much work did we think we could do with Wallace Group given our funds. We couldn't get to the 60%, so I didn't include that full amount, and so on. And then the district general manager, district engineer, and council for an annual cost is about $119,000. So those are the key expenses. You want to see the detail, and as I've said a number of times in the past, I think some people's home budgets, in fact, most of our home budgets are probably more complex than this budget. That's everything we spend. Those are the buckets we spend it in. And I suspect if you were to compare this to your home budget, all the dollar figures may not be the same. The number of line items you probably got related to your car and everything else, there's probably more of them than you would see in this budget. So as you can see, and it kind of lines up with what I said before, at the very bottom on the right-hand side, projecting to have about $150,000. If your board chose to today, you could allocate it towards something. Otherwise, it would just sit in our checking account and the board can expend it over the year. This is all in a single fund, so there's no special activities that have to be done to move it from one fund to another. If you're familiar with multiple fund accounting, for instance, at a county, you know that often if you want to move from one bucket to another, it would take a unanimous vote or a positive vote of the board. To do that, here it's just direction, yeah, it's 4 out of 5, yeah. Here, your board can just direct this all in one. So, by way of actions, you have to officially open the hearing to receive public comment, to take public comment. If there's any, you'll close the hearing. You'll deliberate on the budget that's posted online as well. You'll make changes as appropriate, and then presumably there'll be a motion to adopt the budget. Otherwise, we get to sit here and we'll go through it until we get there. Because you have to have a budget come July 1st, and we're at June 10th.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and open for public hearing, public comment. Open the public hearing at 5:25.
You have one public comment.
Okay, do we have, is there anybody that would like to make a public comment on this item? I don't know, where is it?
5.
Okay, 5.
Yeah. Michelle.
Michelle, okay.
Thank you again. Groundwater testing has been removed from the budget. I did not hear any board member in previous board meetings publicly request that this be removed. After the board invested heavily in installing 5 groundwater monitoring wells, the district's own monitoring data appears to show a localized downtown issue along with the small lots adjacent, rather than a district-wide crisis. There's no evidence of a public health issue, which was mischaracterized by the Wallace engineer at the workshop. On May 31st, 2023, the Central Coast Regional Water Quality Board sent the general manager a letter explicitly requiring the LOCSD to install and sample groundwater monitoring wells. Removing this line item from the budget appears to put the district in direct conflict with the state board requirement. I asked the board, has the water board been notified of this potential decision? If not, the district risks ignoring a formal regulatory requirement. The board does not have discretion to selectively comply with water board mandates. Doing so exposes the district to significant legal and regulatory liability.
Do we have any additional public comment regarding the budget? Anyone online? Oh, sorry, Matt.
One other question. I know that I noticed that our property tax assessment at CSD is not $505 and what seems to be increasing. Can you tell me what the next year's assessment on our tax is?
I couldn't hear him. I'm sorry.
He's asking about the assessment.
Next year's.
It's up to you. Yeah. So the short answer is, Matt, I don't know what the exact number is on yours. We do offer some different approaches. Generally speaking, it goes up by CPI for the prior year. So whatever the number is currently at the last 12 months of CPI, we're actually going to have that agendized for next month.
Okay, thank you.
Comment on this item?
On the budget, why was the water testing removed?
If you don't mind, can we answer that question afterward? This is public comment period. I'm sorry, no Q&A. It's a little more, if it was an easy question we could answer, or quick that we could answer, but it's public comment period as opposed to Q&A.
Maybe we can answer by what you
So, yeah, I'll have to you take it. as I said earlier, you know, we've had conversations in the past, and the board has said, let's not include it in the budget. We'll try and get county grant dollars from the Environmental Health Safety, Health Services Department, to fund it. And so if it's in the budget, they might just say, well, we've already budgeted for it. So you've got the money, obviously. Why am I giving you a grant? So.
Any just other public comment on the budget? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and I'm sorry, nobody online, right? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public comment period at 5:28 p.m. Sorry, 6:28.
That clock, I don't think it's correct, but okay.
6:28, sorry, 6:28 p.m. Right, we'll bring it back to the board. Are there any questions, comments?
Madam President, just a couple of things. Well, first of all, I think it's important, as we've talked about this and Mr. Savage has mentioned several times, you know, we'll adopt a budget and we can amend that budget. In terms of, has the regional board been notified of these actions that are sitting right there? We have a difficult choice here, because if we can't move forward our design to get to a vote, then begs the question, do we even continue, and then will there be testing anyways? So, you know, this dilemma seems to be here no matter what. I think looking for outside funding to do the testing, if we can, is probably a way to go. Sometimes we noticed on some of our actions that we've taken that costs have come in under, and it's possible that we could decide then to do something at that time. So I'm prepared to support the budget as proposed by the general manager.
Yeah, I mean, I support the budget as written, and I think hopefully we can get some money from the water board if they really want the testing done. You know, we have X number of tests done, they're relatively consistent, and we're running out of money. So I think that it is a valid thing to go, and if the county comes in and says we have to do it, then we can always make our budget and go forward with that.
Yeah, I just add to that, General Manager Savage noted that we have a little bit of a reserve right now on the books for next year. We could allocate some of that funding if needed to the testing. But as to the comment Mr. Loudon had about what is this going to cost me, getting the engineering assessment done is going to answer that. And in order to do that, we really need that 90% design. I'm not comfortable asking anybody in this community to vote on something that's a range from something that's pretty nebulous. I mean, I think everybody in this community should expect to know what is this going to cost. And again, that's the 90% design. So we did make the decision in terms of funding to do everything we can to help drive to that, so everybody does have a clear answer about what the cost is. So that didn't really like to make a I'm sorry, Director Palmer, did you have any questions, comments?
Yes, similarly on the testing, I'm wondering, General Manager Savage, have you had conversations with the county or the water board about what the budget would be for next year and what the ask is of them if they want the testing to continue?
So I've spoken to the county about it. Current testing costs annually are about $16,000. And they have some grant funds that could probably be used in this fashion.
Okay. So
they're not in hand, so I don't put them in the budget because I don't have the money. Thank you for.
Understood, but I think, again, I know we're talking about the budget, but I think it's important that we pursue the grant funds so that it's not that we don't want to continue the testing, it's a matter of priority of how we're allocating the funding right now. So I would just say as a note, maybe put the note on the budget that we're pursuing a grant from the county to fund the 26-27 monitoring. The other thing I was going to suggest or offer is that we've got that reserve, but perhaps the 26-27 fiscal year is the year to suspend having a reserve. Because if we don't have a project by next year sometime or in the next fiscal year, we could suspend it on a one-time basis. I'm just putting it out there, or be prepared to spend it in this coming year. So those are my comments.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion or questions for the general manager? Somebody would like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion, we adopt the fiscal year 26-27 budget as proposed by the general manager.
Second.
Director Fayram?
Aye.
Director Parks?
Aye.
Director Palmer?
Aye.
President Kennedy?
Aye. Thank you very much for the information and the work on the budget. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is the general manager's brief district status report.
Apart from a quick note that groundwater monitoring testing was completed today, they took the samples today, let me be clear. It'll be a couple weeks before we get the results. Everything else is on the budget, or I mean on the agenda for later, so.
Okay, thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Yes.
So just a couple of quick notes about this particular consent agenda. First of all, there are a much larger number of invoices than normal because we didn't meet last month, and we've got a lot going on between groundwater testing and the Wallace Group's efforts and other things. So not surprising number. I would note that because many of them came in later, the Finance Committee subcommittee did not meet, so there's no recommendation from that group related to them, although individual members, I'm sure, did take the time to look at them in detail. I'd also note that the consent agenda includes an item to basically receive and file the 24-25 audit. As I've reported a number of times in previous meetings, that was a painful process with our new auditor. I spoke to council about this item, and we have released an RFP less than a year ago. So with a little direction from your board, I would recommend that we go out to the number 2 scorer on that RFP and see if their pricing still holds. And if it does, they consider a contract. I would bring back a contract for your consideration next month to do the 25-26, which will have just ended, right? So to be clear about what happened this time around, they were 6 months behind, and a lot of work on our part compared to the auditor we had used the time before. Lots of good reasons, in my opinion, to not continue with them. And I don't think they'd be broken hearts if we went elsewhere based on other responses I received. So if your board wants to consider giving direction separately, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll just take, kind of general nods to go off and do that independent of what you're doing here as far as approving the consent agenda and so on.
Before we do a vote, we'll open it up to public comment. If there's anybody that would like to comment on the consent agenda, any of the items? Anybody online? No public comment on this.
What item number is it?
6? 7, sorry, 7. Okay, well, if any board members, any questions, comments for
Well, if we approve this consent, then we can still switch arguments, correct?
Yes.
You can make that part of your motion.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the stipulation of looking into changing auditors.
Second.
All right, first and second, all in favor?
Actually, because we got somebody.
Oh, that's right, we have to do a roll call, thank you.
Director Parks?
Aye.
Director Fayram?
Aye.
Director Kennedy?
Aye.
Director Palmer?
Aye.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, moving on to the next
Just
item.
for the record, Madam President, just for the record, if the second auditor in the RFP will hold the price that they quoted, we will come back. This action was not an approval of a contract. We will come back with a contract before the board for the next auditor.
Great. Thank you for the clarification on that. Okay, moving on then to the next item, item 8, which is the discussion regarding June 3rd community workshop on collection and conveyance and the consideration of an approach to collection and conveyance of wastewater and consideration of financing for continued engineering efforts related to collection of conveyance of wastewater. Would you want to proceed with this?
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of public comment on this, so we just get it for everyone at its benefit, some information, and then we'll have a open it up to public comment.
Okay, so I've got quite a few slides here, both kind of some clarifications based on many of the questions and comments I received that night and I heard from the workshop itself, so your board and the public can talk about the workshop. Part of the workshop included the no project memo. There are copies like there were the other night. There are copies in the back if somebody wants one. Really, as a reminder, the Wallace Group's effort was focused around collection and conveyance, and it was really intended to be the setup based on the 30% design for your board to make a decision as to whether we're going to go with STEP or with gravity-fed collection, and then how to do conveyance. I think time for a really good conversation, and I've got some things for your consideration in that regard. And then sidebar about funding in general for the $1 million that we need to complete the 60-90% designs, and I'll talk about each one of those. So my recommended approach to this item is let me do my presentation in total, or can, ask questions along the way, make comments, then open it up officially for public comment, and then bring it back for direction and or direction to me. So the decision will be directed to me. Also available online, of course, is Carrie Wagner from the Wallace Group, who gave the presentation last week. In the audience here, Cecile Blancart from the Water Board, and Tamara is also here. Thank you for coming all the way down here. Appreciate it. So I'm going to start with this picture. It's very similar to the one I showed the other night. So collection up here in the district, and that's really the way I try and get people to try and think of it, right? We collect within the district, and then when we get to the bottom of the district here, as we begin to leave the district and head towards solving, that's the conveyance line. So we collect in the district, and then we convey it down the line. Mouse is working. Okay, so this is just kind of saying in words what I just said, kind of verbally. Collection happens within the district from parcels, whether it's commercial or residential. It doesn't matter on zoning, we collect. And again, just as a recap, we're talking about STEP, septic tank effluent pumping, which is a pressurized system, right? It comes out of your house, goes into a tank, and the liquid, solids stay, the liquid under pressure get pushed into a collection system. Gravity systems, on the other hand, effluent comes out of your house, and everything that comes out of your house goes down a pipe by gravity flow into the sewer main to where it's going to be lifted or pumped or pushed, and then into the conveyance system. We're going to talk about both of those in just a second. So conveyance, again, is how we move wastewater from the district at the bottom to the city of Salt Lake. Wallace Group used a little bit different terms than we've used in the past. They used the term pumped, meaning it's pressurized, right? We've talked about a force main and pressurized. They did not really address gravity, which is not pressurized, but could be another approach to conveying wastewater down to salt. So 3 really important issues or areas of concern that were raised by the public and others just as they look through the design. And if somebody, I do have one copy, it's on the back there, if somebody wants to take a look at it. 3 areas of concern. Something called an equalization tank, and I'm going to give you a broad description of what an equalization tank is and how it matters and why it matters. The conversation around hanging conveyance pipes on the bridges. So as you drive from the south end of the district to Solvang, as you know, you go across a number of bridges, 3, I think, maybe 4. Anyhow, you go across a number of bridges, and the Wallace Group didn't have anything from the county of Santa Barbara definitive that said you can hang a pipe on the bridge as opposed to going underneath the creek. We now have confirmation from the county that they will allow us to hang a pipe on the bridge. Why is that important? It's a heck of a lot less expensive, right? You don't have to dig underneath a bridge. You don't have to worry about all sorts of vacuum sorts of things that happen when you go through a tunnel like that. So it's important, and you'll see how in just a minute. And then the last conversation is around this term called dewatering, and I'll redefine it again when we get to the end, but dewatering really is you dig a hole and water's flowing in. Dewatering is the process of getting the water out of there so you can put in a pipe or whatever you're trying to build. And then I'll talk about that more in a minute. So I'm going to touch on all three of these and how they impact the design, because again, these were the three questions and areas that I heard the most. I'm not saying there aren't other areas that people had questions about related to the Wallace Group design, but these are the ones that I heard the most. So here we are. I just put it into this little table because it helped me wrap my brain around what was going on. So you've got collection here across the top, gravity and step, right? And conveyance, meaning how we get it down the solvang, pump, or gravity. So the Wallace Group, all of their work focused on scenarios 1 and 2. And that's exactly what they call them in the document. You'll see that on the next page. It says scenario 1, gravity pump, scenario 2, step pump. With this more recent conversation from the county, gravity is something we should at least explore because it could be a lot cheaper than a pumped conveyance to solve. And I'll explain how that all works to some level. I'm not going to get into really nitty-gritty detail, but hopefully enough that people can follow along and understand why it's important. So here's my take on the importance of an equalization tank. And what really is an equalization tank? Let's start with that. Just think of a large-ish sort of a hole in the ground that doesn't go anywhere but into the pipes, right? Much like most septic tanks or other cold water cooling tanks. So it allows you to equalize and control the flow of what's coming from the district and heading to Solvang. So Solvang has said they would like us to implement an equalization tank. It's just a way of, again, controlling when things get to the city of Solvang. So the documents that the Wallace Group put together kind of talk about this, but I'm going to touch on it a little bit more. So scenario 1 was gravity collection with a pumped conveyance. So how does that work? Well, you have one or more lift stations that move the water, the wastewater across Alamo Creek, right? Because by the time we get to the bottom of the district with a gravity system, we're going to be down into that shallow groundwater table and 15 maybe or so feet deep, right? It's going to be down a ways. So you've got to lift that water back up after you get it on the other side of the creek and then get it going to solve it. So that was scenario 1, gravity and pump. Scenario 2 for them was step system and pump. Now keep in mind that when you use a step system, when you drop the mic over there, when you have a step system, that water comes out of the home, the parcel, already under pressure, right? So it can just flow essentially right on down all the way to solving. So without an equalization tank, that pressure is there, right? And it just kind of flows. If we have to put in an equalization tank, and just to help people wrap their brains around this, basically once all of the collection is done, you're going to put the equalization tank right there, essentially, wherever that may be, or somewhere along the conveyance line that makes sense. So what that again means is, first of all, you can shift to gravity, would be something worth exploring. But importantly, particularly for the step systems, it creates a break in the system, and this is what I'm talking about with scenario 4. So the pressure you got from the step systems goes into a tank, and then you got to kind of pump it and pressurize it again to keep it pressurized to get to solving. So there are ways to make it work technically. I'm not suggesting it's not a viable approach. Just know that if we have to add an equalization tank, some of the benefit of step goes away because we have to have another pump in the way and all that sort of stuff. So again, I just bring this up to say that I see this conversation around the equalization tank as a very big deal, regardless of which way board and public decides they want to collect, because it does create that sort of break right there. And importantly, I think it helps people wrap their brain around this conversation of how we convey, right? One could be gravity and the other one pumped, or one could be pumped and the other one gravity. Whatever mix you want to put together is technically possible. Doesn't mean it's something we're going to pursue. Well, we'll talk about that as part of this whole conversation. But again, Wallace Group, while they did talk about with or without an equalization tag, their costing is all on scenarios 1 and 2 that are shown here. All right. I'm not going to go through this in too much detail. You heard Kerry Wagner from the Wallace Group go through it pretty quickly the other day. This is the Wallace Group's view of scenario 1 and scenario 2, the strengths of the systems and the weaknesses of the system. I think it's important for each of us to take a few minutes to just read through it. I'm not going to do it right now. It's online. You can look at it there. But as you're trying to sort your own thoughts out around which scenario do you support, this is the sort of stuff that you want to look at. Is it an exhaustive list? No, there's other strengths and weaknesses, but these were the ones that the Wallace Group said these are the top ones to at least think about and consider. So back, I don't know, when was it, 3 years ago now, when we did the first real workshop and we asked people what was important, they said cost of construction, cost for O&M, and then 6 or 7 other items. So this is the cost sheet, and it's kind of the one that was referred to before. Remember, in the Wallace Group's scenario, these costs that you see here are their, I'm putting this in quotes, baseline costs, meaning they had a range of a low, which is lower than this number, and a high that is higher than this number. They included things like construction reserves and all that. So this is based on their baseline numbers. If you want the full range, it's in last week's presentation, which is posted online, and there are links to the full report there as well. So that's the cost at the top, the capital cost for everyone, and then that whole per EDU. And for those who weren't here, an EDU, it's an equivalent dwelling unit. You basically start logically from what's a house, right? What's a home? That's one EDU essentially. And then if you're, say, a large hotel, you're probably multiple EDUs. In fact, you are multiple EDUs. And they used a pretty simple calculation that said, just to come up with numbers to begin to talk about, that commercial properties are 6 EDU. Not all of them are 6, but some are more, some are less. So in their calculation, private residence is 1 EDU and commercial is 6 EDU. 30-year life cycle, 30-year private costs, and 30-year total residential. I'm going to drill in on a couple of these numbers because, again, it's an attempt to help people understand and answer the questions that I've received the most. So this is the first one. I pulled out gross C and D there, the private residential costs per EDU and the private commercial capital costs per EDU, and kind of blew them up there at the bottom. So the 16,400, that's for scenario 1. These are dollars that every parcel owner would pay out of their pocket up front, okay? This is independent of the cost for construction, all right? So in this case, private residents would pay 16,400, and under scenario 2 step, they would pay 39,200. Big difference is primarily things like the replacement of you'd have to install a step tank, connect electrical, that sort of stuff. So that's the initial cost to connect, and then that is kind of the flip side of why, if you look at back at row A there, gravity fed collection is much higher. Step is much lower because you kind of shift some of those costs, right? You move some of the things that would have happened with the gravity fed collection, meaning pipes that go deeper and deeper into the ground primarily, versus pipes that are under pressure and could stay closer to the ground surface level. So one of the things we asked the Wallace Group to do is say, well, what does it cost over 30 years? Because that's the nominal lifespan for a septic system. About every 30 years, it's failing enough that you have to replace it. So let's do a comparison that way just to help people understand what it costs. For residents, under scenario 1, meaning gravity-fed collection, it's about $88,000. For step 2, or scenario 2 rather, step, it's about $97,000, about a $10,000 difference. It flips around a little bit for commercial, by about $15,000. It's a little cheaper for step because you only have to install one tank, right? It's primarily about the tank and that sort of thing. But as you can see, there's some trade-offs to be had there. So when you look at these totals over 30 years, and you go back to that column A, or row A rather, and you look at the capital costs for the two, it really is a policy question for the board to think through and debate about, okay, in some ways, not entirely, but in some ways, step is a removal of the construction cost, meaning what would appear on our property tax bill, and a shift toward what I would have to pay up front to make the system function. So it's kind of that, how much do I pay today out of my pocket and is not funded through some other mechanism versus what I would pay on my property tax, and whether it's USDA or whoever loan you would pay over time. So that's a real policy question, and I think it's one that your board needs to grapple with and decide where you want to be, because that's core to this whole conversation between gravity versus steps. I mentioned I talked about dewatering. Again, that's just the process of you dig a trench, regardless of whether it's step or gravity. This is an issue. It's a bigger issue for gravity because we'll be deeper, right? The step lines will typically run 5 to 6 feet, meaning they'll get the foot or two below our existing water lines, which is required, and they'll be spaced aside. This basically will be going under that existing infrastructure. It is an issue for both, but there are kind of two approaches that are generally used. There may be some others, but these are the two most prominent. Approach one is something called Baker tanks. Now, Baker is a company that was one of the first, I assume, to do this. And you've seen these rolling down the road. If you see a weird-looking trailer behind a truck and it says water for rent, you know, that's what they look like. They're a big square tank often. They get pulled up to a site. They put a pump in, much like a sump pump, into the construction area, and they pump the water out of there into that tank. Now, if you don't have a whole lot of water, that's a great approach, right? But if you've got a lot of water you're trying to deal with, then that is problematic. Because what you're going to do is you're going to take that water in that tank, and then you're going to spread it on existing unused fields or at the dump or wherever, somewhere nearby. The closer the better, right? Because you don't want to pay for fuel, you don't want to pay for all the truck trips and all the other things that come in from an environmental perspective. The second approach is to use Alamo Potato Creek. That does very clearly require permits and treatment of the water, if nothing else, to remove any nitrates that exceed levels. So that is another approach. In talking to the Wallace group, we had a great discussion about this. You know, one of the big factors related to how much dewatering we're going to have to do is what's the weather been like, right? Meaning, what's the groundwater situation at that time? And then that'll drive how much volume we have to move. If we only have to move a few thousand gallons, I think it's probably a perfectly viable solution. If we get into thousands and thousands of gallons, well, we're probably going to need to consider the second approach. So that's why I say we may consider a both approach, right? We won't know until we get closer to construction and we can look at what the weather is. Now, we have thought about, well, when are water levels the lowest? Let's make sure we're doing construction in the areas where the water level, and at the time when the water levels are the lowest, so we can minimize the amount of dewatering. And to put this into perspective, there are millions of dollars in the estimates for dewatering that the Wallace Group included. And that's important because the costs are in there, and if we don't have to do as much of it, those are costs we won't incur. So let me move then to, this is effectively the same slide I showed back in March. All I did was push it out by 1 month, just to show where we're at. So the Wallace Group, phase 1 design, 30-30, meaning 30% design, 30-year cost of ownership. They completed on time. In fact, they were done a little bit early, and they were well under budget. Thank you all. So the original plan held that the board and public would have a month here or so from when they delivered that document to us before to have some debate. In an ideal world, yes, your board and the public would say, let's go with this collection, let's do this, let's do that. There are some things that we can do in the interim if your board isn't ready to make that decision tonight. But just know that the longer we delay the decision, it could begin to impact when you can hold the 218. We're not into a day-by-day, week-by-week, month-by-month slip yet, but if you go too long without some sort of direction, we'll run out of kind of tasks that apply to both step and gravity that we won't be able to do them anymore. You can see here the length of time it takes to get to 60% design and then 90% design based on this schedule. I've estimated it would take about 16 weeks to hammer out the contract with Solvang and get through everything from that equalization tank I was talking about to, remember there was discussion about our participation and how we will participate long-term with costs related to the existing plant, our buy-in, all that stuff, the stuff we've talked about before. But to nail that down in an appropriate fashion, I think 16 weeks. And just to make it plain, I've already reached out to the city of Solvang and said, hey, we need to start having a conversation, if nothing else, just around the equalization tank because it drives our design. Environmental is ongoing. There's some changes and some updates we'll have to make based on whatever collection system is decided on, because again, it could drive things like equalization tanks, lift stations, and then this conversation around dewatering. The environmental engineer will have to consider truck trips and all that sort of stuff related to that. The next step, at least on this schedule, is assessment engineering. We have 3 firms who've given us quotes, bids, proposals related to performing the assessment engineering. I think we've got a couple of really good ones that will come in a bit less than what's shown here, which is a good thing. I don't know that it would take that long to get to a decision. I just have to fire that subcommittee back up to get them to help me make a decision and then bring a contract back to your board for consideration. Remember, that's the person or the organization that takes whatever the total costs are and assigns a value to every property. So when we're finished with the assessment engineering, every parcel owner will know, oh, that's what it will cost me. So it won't be generic numbers anymore. It won't be, oh, I'll just divide it by 385 or parcel count. It'll be, that's Guy's parcel, that's what Guy will pay. So, and then we've got a number of other activities going along at the same time related to Prop 218, some of the communication stuff. When we get closer to a vote, there will be full polling, and then we've got documents we have to produce, and there's the whole process itself, and then ultimately the hearing. Good news on some of these costs that I have down here, particularly related to the process. There are other agencies that operate at the governmental level, particularly one called RCAC, that can help us with the process, meaning we won't have to expend funds to run that process. They will run it in coordination with us, and they will use their funds to help make that happen. So I mentioned funding possibilities earlier. I think we've had some conversation already about the Clean Water SRF program funds. We did not qualify, as I've said in lots of meetings starting back in February, March. The criteria that are pre-established, we don't rank well against. We're not a disadvantaged community. We are small. We're a planning project. We're not a construction project. And there are a number of other criteria, and quite simply, based on our particular makeup, we don't score well against those criteria. Now, as I've also said to individuals, and I'll say here again, I have talked to people at the state and described us as that perfect little donut hole is the phrase I like to use, because we're a new organization, so we don't have funding, right, to help get through a design. If you're the city of LA, you've got lots of other funding you can bring to the table. If you're the county of Santa Barbara, you can move funds from one fund to another to help you get through the planning process and into construction. We don't have that. We're not a disadvantaged community, so those funds aren't available to us. So when you start looking at the criteria, and you compare what's happening in Los Olivos, and not just us, there are other communities just like us, we're kind of this donut hole because we don't match with any of those things. We don't have funds, can't get funds. So how do we get from the concept through planning and ultimately to construction? The commentary seems to strike with the state folks, and they're thinking, yeah, as they begin looking at Prop 4 and under other funds, perhaps there's something that can be done to help us coexist in a way that maybe helps us score better against their criteria. So So that then pushes me down to the second and third bullet. So we had a meeting earlier today with the county, and we have a potential approach to obtaining $1 million. It's broken into two chunks. County EHS, Environmental Health Services, much as they've given us grants for groundwater monitoring and testing, we could probably get up to $250,000 from them for that. It's a full grant, not to be repaid. We just have to show our resources and where we spent the money. In this case, much of it would be just tied directly to a bill from the Wallace Group. Those funds are effectively available now. Given that we have about $150,000, I don't think we'll spend in the next 40 days. So I would want to bring that back at the July meeting if that's your board's desire. Similarly, the county, through their water agency, is willing to loan us $750,000. Two of those, obviously, adding up to the $1 million we need to get through design. Those funds would be a little more time to obtain. Meaning, I probably still hopefully bring back a term sheet for your board and the public to consider in July, but it's not like the grant funds, because with the grant funds, we spend the money and they reimburse us kind of thing. That would be a little slower to happen. The loan, they described it as a no to low interest, hopefully no interest, but my suspicion is there'll be a little bit just because the county's incurring some costs. The thing that isn't entirely clear to me at this juncture to be negotiated is the payment timing and the terms, exactly how that would work. I think the biggest question for the county is, well, if the district runs a 218 and the 218 isn't successful, how do we get our money back, right? And there are ways legally and technically, I think, to make that happen, but I need to see what their terms are before I sit down with council and say, yeah, I think we can do this. This works, right? Kind of thing. So I would want to bring all of that back as part of an agreement that the board would have to approve at a board meeting, hopefully in July. I think, the county has done this with a number of agencies. They did it for the Eastern Management Agency, which is the groundwater management agency that we're part of. They've done it for a couple of other small districts like Montecito and some others. So they're familiar with doing this. So we would be in a program that they're used to doing. They have the approach defined. So we basically asked them today, hey, can you just send us what you think it would look like, and you start the work and we'll comment, sort of thing. So that could be funding enough to get us through design, which would be great. So my last slide, I think, is this question of, well, in the meantime, what could we get Wallace Group to do? And Carrie and her team have been fabulous. The last thing I want us to do is let them get focused on other projects and then try and get them back on our project, because sometimes there's a lag in that, right? Once you start working on a project, you take that one as far as you can. So there are a couple of things that their team can do, and I worked with Carrie to come up with these. So this was talked about briefly at the workshop, I think, and that is one of the things they would like to do to verify depths in particular is go out and identify where every septic tank is. We have asked the county for every record they have related to septic tank locations. We can probably get a little more data by working with some of the septic tank pumpers, although they really should be providing all that to the county anyway. But we would do as much as we can without having to disturb or bother property owners. But ultimately, being able to go out there and say, that's where the tank is, and here's the depth of that line that would go from your property to the street, helps us understand just how deep those mains have to be, right? Because if it's a gravity system in particular, it's got to be able to flow downhill. And generally speaking, you're thinking about 2% grade, right? That's a typical number that is applied. They say that'll take 2 to 3 months and $30,000 to $45,000. The other one is this thing called potholing, and let me describe this because it's one of those terms that if you're in this business, you hear all the time. I hadn't heard it a whole lot until coming on board here. Potholing is, as the name kind of implies, you're basically putting a hole in the ground. Sometimes it's just a small round one. Sometimes, depending upon what you think you might encounter, if you're, for instance, trying to figure out if you know exactly where, say, the water main is, it'll be roughly the size of the water main, maybe a little bigger. So you can go down and say, yep, that's where we thought it was. We confirmed it. So when we do construction, whether it's step or gravity, you can say, okay, I've got to be below that pipe and I know where it is. Yes, we can do things like dig alerts and all that, but you really, before you begin doing construction of this kind of level, want to do this process of potholing. And for the most part, you can just assume that the majority of the potholing will be going along the line where the mains are and the conveyance lines are. Yes, we will do potholing in some other places, but it'll all be in the public right of way. It's not like we're going to be coming onto somebody's individual property and saying, oh, I need to pothole to figure out where. No, we won't be doing that. That process will take about 3 to 4 months and $2,000 to $2,500 per pothole. If your board chooses to go forward with that one, I might suggest you just say, X amount of dollars of potholing. I think the original estimates from the Wallace Group were well over $100,000. So my recommendation would be put a hard stop at, do 50,000, 75, or 100,000 of potholing and then stop. So if your board decides you want to continue down both of those, we have the funds to do a big chunk of that, right? $50,000 worth plus $45,000 worth is only $95,000. I said you've got about 100 to deal with, 150 rather to deal with. So you could do $100,000 in potholing and $45,000 in septic tank locations, and that would essentially use up those funds, but keep the Wallace Group engaged. And then one last thing on the septic tank location. Again, we would do everything we can to not have to disturb property owners, but there eventually would probably be a process where we would try and coordinate with property owners to come on site, figure out with the property owner, oh, Tom can walk us to his backyard because he knows where it is, show us where things like cleanouts are, because cleanouts are a good indicator of where the septic tank is and depth, things like that.
So the potholing for septic tanks?
That's a process that would be something that would be well coordinated. My point is, nobody's just going to show up and walk onto somebody's property without talking to the property owner and coordinating with the property owner first. I don't want anybody to walk out thinking that's going to happen, right? Instead, we can be well coordinated and so on. So I think that's my last. So actions to consider. I would suggest you consider making decisions on collection and conveyance. I think given some of the unknowns about equalization tanks, making decisions on the conveyance is probably a little harder than making it on the collection side because we need to know that. It's pretty important. And the work I described before is independent of the collection system, right? You can do those no matter what. And then provide direction to me about where you want me to go with those funding options I outlined. Again, tonight would not be a formal vote on that. Instead, you just be giving me direction to do whatever. So again, back to where we started, I would recommend your board do your initial questions and answers. The water board is here to answer questions related to that if you want. Terry is online to answer questions if you have questions of her, or I can certainly field the ones based on my commentary. And with that, back to you.
So we're going to have the board ask questions. We'll get those answered, and then we'll open up for public comment. So everybody can hold up for a moment. But before we do that, I did want to reach out to both CL and Tampa Flame Water Board if there was anything you wanted to add to what Guy presented. And then Carrie, same thing for you. We'll see if there's anything you wanted to add before we start with board questions. Okay, no, I don't. Nothing. Okay. All right. Carrie, did you have anything you wanted to add to Guy's presentation?
No, Guy did a great job, but I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Board members, anybody questions?
Well, personally, I don't think I'm ready to make a recommendation on it. I think we have more questions than we would like to have to go going forward with it. And one of the questions, I guess, that latest letter you got, pump stations must be on private land. I think that is something, the letter that we have there. The approach as far as right of ways. they're saying that the pump stations cannot be in the right of way, they have to be on private land. So that would be a big consideration if pump stations are not necessary with STEP or more limited with STEP. If we have to require public lands to put them on, that also is another place where costs are going to be accrued. And then in the memorandum that we got from the Wallace Group talking about equalization, I think that's something that we probably need to get more information on. And they're talking here is 350,000 gallons of storage capacity would be necessary, which is the equivalent to 30 10-foot by 20-foot deep wells. And I think that could be, like the report says, it could be in the millions of dollars, and I think that's something that also needs to be explored before the vote is taken of which way to approve it. And I talked to Sullivan about that and whether or not equalization would be a less chance that equalization would be a step versus gravity, and they were extremely forthcoming and just really didn't seem to know the answers on that. So I think that's something that needs to be explored further. Dewatering budgets, I guess I just don't realize or just don't know why with effluent, with the boring technology, why dewatering would even be much of a problem. If you're using boring technology, you're not having open trenches. And if you're not having open trenches, you shouldn't need to be dewatering with the boring technology for the collection pipes. And I guess lastly, I know this is probably news to a lot of people, but NFO has been discussing with Regen the study on just potential alternatives, and I know, and I think that has been submitted to Powell, and I don't know, I have not seen it, and I don't think anyone on the board has seen it. So I think that is another area that potentially be explored if everything, if funding is not, if we don't get a funding source to help us with the high cost of the project and the potential of getting voted down at 218. So those are things I think we need to look at before I'm comfortable voting to go forward with either of those collection systems.
Okay. Lisa Palmer, Director Palmer, any questions for either for Jerry or the Wells Group or Joe Manager?
Well, I have one, well, a couple, but does the potholing work help assess the dewatering scope? No. Okay. So you couldn't do boring.
I don't believe so. Carrie, can you answer that?
Yeah, I can jump in on that. So the
Carrie,
potholing.
I don't believe it does, but because it's just finding, it's not, there's, let's see the other one, you take everything out, what's there, what do you call that? It's a different kind of boring. Where you're taking the sample out, boring kind of stuff.
So, well, there's a factor, use a suction truck to a depth and find groundwater. Typically, if you're looking for like the water district's pipes, because they're 3 feet down, and the water's 5 to 10 feet.
Does that answer your question, Director Palmer?
It was hard for me to understand. But
so I'll just try and repeat. So basically, just Engineer Pike was saying that with potholing, you're not going to go deep enough to really understand what's happening with dewatering, because you're really looking for those places where you're going to be encountering, for instance, the water pipes, and those are only a few, somewhere between 3 and 4 feet deep. So you're not going 5, 10, 15, 20 feet into the ground. You're staying fairly shallow.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then I did have a few comments, and I wanted to piggyback on a couple things Greg said as well. You know, I think there's just a few potential big exposure or, dollar item issues, I think it would be good to get more clarity on if we can before we select. That's on the flow equalization versus the peak flow issue with solving, which I think Greg addressed. The creek discharge issue, I don't even know if we can get a preliminary from the water board on what that looks like, if it's possible. The bridge issue, do we have something in writing from the county that says we can't use the bridge as, the bridge hang versus the bore? I'd want to get that codified, because I think that's a large issue. The other part is, if you'll recall on the STEP issue, or the STEP budget, I don't believe it had any estimate for the easement procurement or litigation related to easement procurement. I think that is a potential major exposure. I don't know if there's any other projects or any other guidance or order of magnitude, just looking at kind of an 80-20 rule on how that might go. I think we need to figure out what that would look like. I did see the email from Polo today that the report's available. It had some questions on the Wallace Group report. I think it'd be worth the district Wallace Group via the district addressing those. The report's supposed to be out next week to the district. I think it's worth adding that into the body of work, if you will, before we make a final decision, at least on the decision on the conveyance or the conveyance issue. Are we ready to talk about? Well, I'll stop there.
I was going to wait, but just because there were some comments made by Bill board members, I would disagree with not moving forward. I think we know what the community wants. I've been on this board for 8 years, and I think we need to move towards the democratic process of letting the property owners make the selection. And we've heard from the property owners what their preference is. And I think we have enough information. There's a lot of stuff we could do along the way. I don't think we should get sidebarred every time there's a distraction, keep us from getting to the end. And we'll continue to incur costs and push this down the line and then not finish. So I'll have more on that, but I don't know. We could continue on this for another 8 years. I won't, but you all can. So I think we need to push this on down the process line and then continue to gather information on as we go. Hearing something is coming from Polo, I got an email in August that said that was coming. And we've already made a decision. This board has voted on a project. We have a resolution number, Mr. Savage, 2501. So if we're going to throw that down while we continue to get sidebarred, I think it's an insult to the property owners that made their voices clear. So I'll be prepared to discuss what
One clarification. Director Palmer, you asked whether there's the step estimates included anything on easements, and Carrie can confirm this, but I believe they used an average number of $5,000 per property, which I did have a brief discussion with council, and to Director Palmer's comment, it's the 80-20 rule. Some of them will be under that, hopefully a big number of them, but some of them will be quite a bit more than that. And I think there's, until you start going through it, we won't know exactly what that looks like. But so there was a number included. It was $5,000. That's the response.
That is correct.
Any other questions?
Go ahead, Carrie.
Okay, yeah, that is correct. $5,000 was per parcel was included for the easement description and processing of the easement. We did not include any funds for litigation besides what was included in the contingency or as contingency.
All right, thank you.
So I had a question on this, great touch on this as well, and this public right of way document that we got from County Public Works, this idea that a pump station has to be on private property. Is that the same thing as a lift station? And if the answer is yes, Terry, can you maybe address, did your work cover or plan or budget for the acquisition of said land that if we have to do lift station?
Yeah, so the letter was not alarming from the county. Everything that was in the letter would be what I would anticipate from the county. They will not allow a lift station, the wet well, the vault. They will not allow that in the road, nor do you want it in the road, because if you have to maintain, you have to be out there maintaining that lift station on a daily, weekly basis, and you don't want your operators, your crew out in the road, shutting the road down every single day. They also alluded, or not alluded, but they identified the fact that they will not allow, because I think this question came up at the workshop, was, well, why can't we have the step system in the road and not on the private property and have the district install it? Again, the county will not allow that. The county will not allow a step tank or a tank of any sort inside the public right-of-way. If it's for a private property owner, that facility has to, besides the lateral, has to be on the private property. The lift station we do have designed off the road outside of the public right-of-way, and I would have to go back and confirm. I believe we provided some land acquisition costs included in the cost estimate.
Thank you. That's all I had. So if there's something else from the board, we'll go ahead. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Do you want us to address, Waterboard to address Director Palmer's question about the permitting?
Yes, please.
Okay, happy to do that. So, Tamara Anderson with the Central Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board.
Lisa, can you hear this? Okay, thank you.
Okay. So Director Palmer asked about what the permitting would look like, and correct me if I don't have this question, but if there's enough water from the dewatering where you choose the option to want to discharge that water to the creek, what that would look like for our office, if that is the route that you chose to go. It depends on the quality of the water. So we have what's called a low threat permit and then a highly treated groundwater permit. And both of those are different types of they're called MPDS permits, so National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permits. And those are the types of permits you need if you're going to discharge wastewater directly to a surface water body. And we would need more information about the quality of water to determine that. So part of that application process is you would let our office know and what you need to take them samples and inform us what is the quality of that water, and that would help inform what permitting route we would go. And so one of them is probably low threat. It's going to be less effort. The other option would require some sort of treatment. There's also, if you don't go the creek discharge route, this project, because of the length of the pipeline, so your pipeline from here to Solvang will trigger the need to get enrolled under stormwater permit for the construction activities. And one option under that permit is to cover the discharge of dewatered water. So that is also another permitting option if you have a land application option that is part of your project. So we work with these types of projects all the time, so I'm definitely happy to work with your team on this one.
Thank you.
Yeah, could you look at our well samples and would it help you get an idea of whether or not that water, like, can we take water directly out of our monitoring wells? And could that water be discharged directly into the creek? Because I think that would be a relatively good representation of the water that would be flowing into any trenches that we dug. So we have those samples, over the last couple of years.
Great question. So when I'm looking at, you have your collection system in town, and then you have your conveyance pipe. So I could see potentially those monitoring wells being really potentially a good representation.
So they're down by the south side of where, where the trenches would be the deepest. And that's where we have 2 wells down on that side of the district. So.
And we are definitely open to looking at using existing wells that are available to collect that water. And yes, I think that would be a great place to start to have that conversation.
Yeah. Okay, board, any more questions, comments for anyone? We're going to go ahead and open up to public comment. Okay, it's public comment time. Okay, now go ahead.
Yeah, question. We talked about the step system, and this was kind of covered really quickly last Wednesday night about the fact that the owners have responsibility for their solid waste. What do we do with it? And remember, this is California. I mean, we could have a installed system, and 4 years down the road, California can come out and say, well, you can't deposit that waste. You have to treat it. It has to be done according to what new laws require. You talk about that? Public where? I mean, that's
It's a service that comes and comes in.
to a treating place. I mean,
Yeah. They're not going to tell everyone in the state of California that they can't do that. I mean, that would.
Yeah, sorry.
It's not.
It's a board meeting, we have to adhere to the Brown Act, so it's public comment. If you have lengthy, detailed questions, please reach out to the general manager, and he can help you or get you the information from one of the sources that will be able to answer that.
And also, you talked about no funds, because we don't have the money. We do have an assemblyman and a state senator. Where are they? I kind of feel like we've been abandoned in this whole process. We formed the CSD, the county's gone, the state's gone, and their mandate this didn't get done, and I just don't understand. I kind of felt like the letter from the Regional Water Control Board was pretty heavy-handed about the option. I mean, we're talking about a huge project with a huge cost that's going to be divided between very few property owners. I mean, it's detrimental to a lot of people. A lot of people will not be able to stay in their homes. I can tell you that right now. And the letter states that it's a water quality issue. But is it? Do we have a drinking water problem? We don't. Our drinking water is not affected by this. I mean, those samples that you get, although one of them uses the threshold was changed a few years ago by 1,000%. From 100 parts per million to 10 parts per million. We're at 11, so we're going to spend $170 million for 1 part per million nitrate. You get more than that eating bacon. I'm just wondering. Nobody's representing this. You guys are doing a great job. You're trying to get all the information. You're trying to do everything you possibly can. I just think we're being abandoned here. We're not getting any help. We're not getting help from the people that are supposed to be representing us. They're mandating what we have to do. And I don't agree with it. I think it's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll just put down the line here on the public comment on this one. All right, Jeannie Hollingsworth. Just as a reminder, it's public comment, and again, sorry, it's not discussion, it's not workshop, so please don't be upset if we cut you off.
Yeah, thanks for your work, and I understand where we want it to be over. But we've been working on this for 50 years and most believe us. So I read the letter, put out the no project letter, and that it addresses what happens if we do nothing. Everybody's saying, especially the Wallace group, if we don't do anything, we're in trouble. Well, that's not really what it says. It says that we have regulatory options if we need to use them. And one of them is increased monitoring and reporting, inspection of on-site wastewater systems, requirement to repair or replace failing systems, additional management measures to protect groundwater quality, oversight by regulatory agencies. So they're saying, we'll do the water testing if you can. And also, what they also said was Olivos has not been designated as tier 4 now because nobody's imposing that, nobody's really even done the testing. So the fact that the letter says the water board's not committing to implementing any of its options, that means it's good news. We have time. We have time to do the testing. We have time to find out what's going on. We've been dealing with this, for 50 years, and the CSD is here and developed. That's the most wonderful thing. But we haven't identified the source of contamination. We know nitrates come from septic, and it's only in one area. And we know that can come from agriculture, and that's probably in another area, but otherwise we've got pretty good results. So before we go spending $60 million, shouldn't we identify the actual sources of the actual areas that are contributing to the problem and how we could control those areas and how they could be dealt with? The choice is not a $60 million project in disaster. That there are multiple paths forward. And one of the options is additional groundwater management. Have we evaluated groundwater? Have they been compared financially to the current proposal? Why is the region study not being prepared to the Wallace proposal when it was coming in at $24 million and it's here and it's done? That is an avoidance of fact, scientific evidence. Could targeted solutions address areas of concern at a lower cost? We know it's only one area. Could we do a phase plan like the region study has studied in phases to deal with the worst areas first and then come out? But why is it just going ramrodding to solving? Let's compare the costs. Let's understand all of the alternatives and be open to the real alternatives that exist here and now. And let's identify the sources of contamination and then let the community make the election to decide where they want to go. The risk right now for you is getting Proposition 218 done. Proposition 218 won't pass if you don't understand what's going on.
Thank you, that's fine. Do we have any other, Hillary? Go ahead.
My mom has property here in town, and none of it is in the areas where we have problems for groundwater well testing. She has property that's completely vacant, and one of the proposals up there was showing residential versus commercial. Well, she doesn't even fall. She's obviously not commercial, but she's zoned residential. So if she can actually have to put a system on her properties that are completely vacant, or are you going to do something else? That really doesn't make any sense, because when you guys are going to be evaluating these projects, you really need to look at what's existing on the property right now. Los Olivos wanted a small system, something that was phased in, not a system that goes straight to solving. I think that when you are going to have a system from region, which this woman just said was approximately $24 million, that's a huge difference compared to what you guys are looking at right here. You are not going to have people that are going to vote for Proposition 218. They're just going to say no. So I think you really need to compare and maybe have a special meeting about this region study that is, almost ready or has been submitted to you guys. It has been submitted, okay. It has been submitted to them? It's done, okay. So you guys have done a lot of work, but I don't think that the work that you've done is really going to be what our community wants, especially when people really find out what the price tag is. You will have people that will not be able to live here any longer. They will have to sell their property and leave. And that is because of a vote that you guys may maybe take tonight to head toward, a sewer system of solving. I don't think that's right. And I think you really need to consider what's going to happen to all of these people that are retired, that live on a fixed income. They will not be able to continue to live here. So I'm very sad if this is what you guys are going to, vote tonight to head toward, solving. I think you guys need to pause this and you need to regroup and really think about what we initially wanted, which is a phased approach. You could put something in at my mom's house, an advanced wastewater treatment, for about $70,000 versus what you would have to pay with something dissolving. It's just ridiculous. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah. I think everybody knows how I feel about this. I'd like to have a sewer system. I'd like to have it as a gravity fed system, just flush it, forget it. We've been doing this, I came here 31 years ago, and we've been discussing sewage 31 years ago, and we're still doing it. And, 8 years ago, the board got set up, it's been 8 years later, and we're still discussing it. And there's certain powers that be in this valley that they don't want sewers, they want to stop it at every turn. So anytime there's a decision that comes up, whether it's going to Solvang or anything, there's like all of a sudden they throw this shiny object out there. So, oh, well, look at this would be better. Whether it's, let's go to down to school instead of Solvang, we have another study that's done, maybe we should look at that. And we just keep on doing studies, and we just get distracted. We look all different places, but we're not really moving forward. So basically, I agree with Tom. It's been long enough. Let's move forward. Let's get sewers. Let's flush and forget it.
Anyone else? Public comment? Do we have anyone online?
Didn't see anybody. Did it go? Still no hands.
All right, board.
Okay.
The gentleman that just stood up and spoke, told you I had it.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comment? We're moving on.
Well, I've got a lot of thoughts here, and my thoughts go to moving forward. I think Mr. Savage talked about it. Every year is another $1.5 million, regardless of what system basically selected. And I think there's a couple issues that are going on here. I can think of three. One, okay, the question over the water quality has been discussed. We also have a lot of members in this community that just don't want septic anymore. Tired of it, right? I've heard that many times. I am too. And then there's the basin plan where, regardless of any of those issues, that the use of a septic system on these small lots just is not appropriate in the basin plan. So those all factor into my decision. But I think it was 72% of us voted to form this to pursue a solution. And I think we can't forget that. And I was one of the ones along the way that says the quickest way to slow a project down is to go too fast. And so here we are 8 years later, and I think we've gotten a lot of good information. And I've heard from the public at workshops and then just around town and on walks of what I think people are hoping to see. And, there's a decision on the cost and a value of what your personal preference is. What I found interesting out of the Wallace group was that the step system at cost of ownership was actually more. Now, as we develop this plan, there's a couple things that you have to do. We've met with the regional board. many times. I've heard what the regional board has said they're expecting to see as the rate. I've talked to the county. I know the county quite well on what they want and what they would want to see. The polo email we got this afternoon, every time we get an email the day of our meeting to try to, they pulled out the silver platter, say, hey, wait, look at this. When we heard about this, I tried to reach Mr. Hertel and meet with him, talk about the issue about, did you talk to the regional board? Did Polo talk to you? No. What I think I hear is the proposal, I don't know because it hasn't been sent to us, is a number of these distributed systems, exactly the opposite of what the regional board wants, which is consolidation. Correct me if I'm wrong. And they're looking at putting it in the record road right away. And that's not going to work. And so, I mean, there's some practicality to what, is going to work and what's not going to work. And yeah, we can look at ideas, and I think we have looked at ideas. But I think, we also have to get to the point where let's move on. And here's the fundamental thing. Let's move forward with the project and let it go. If it gets voted down, you're right. No one's going to vote for this. I disagree with, because I've talked to a lot of people too. I don't know if it'll pass. I don't know if it won't. But that's the process. You're going to have people who don't want it. You're going to have people that do want it. The way you resolve that, you're not going to get unanimity, but you do it through the vote. And we wanted to get to a vote last fall, right? And I remember saying that's not going to happen. But now we have a new target next year. I think we need to move forward and pick the selection. And what I've heard is a gravity system going to solving. We've had workshops. Are we going to throw that public comment out that we've had all these workshops? That's what we heard from the community. Are we going to throw that away? I'm not prepared to do that. And so I'll be prepared to make a motion if it doesn't get seconded. If we get it seconded, have a vote. If it doesn't, then it's your guys' turn. I'll stop. Oh, I want to say one other thing on the pump station. Carrie had mentioned they designed it outside of the public road right away. There is an option too, to talk to Mr. Seddon today. If there is excess road right away, they will cede that to us. It won't be in the road right away, but it would be ceded. I don't know, Carrie, if you've heard that or not, but in some areas they have excess road right away that you can utilize. And it wouldn't be in the road right away anymore if they give it to us, which is actually the project we were looking at a long time ago over at the church. It was still pulled right away. So
yeah, and I do have a clarification on that, is that the lift stations are designed in the road right of way, but off the traveled road, which is where the county would likely, we would need to get either an encroachment permit or they would concede the road right of way to the district. But it is not on private property, so therefore I do not have easement costs, or I do not have easement costs for that in there. But we do assume that we are in public right of way, but not in the traveled path of the road.
So I just like to summarize. We've got to this point and we've done a lot of work. We've looked at a lot of things. We've talked to a lot of people. We've talked to the regulators. We've talked to the county, VHS, Public Works. And you have to make this thing work for all of us. You can't just come up with an idea that you think is going to work and cost less, because that'll go nowhere too. And so, and we can't forget, there's a lot of people not in this room right now that have said what they want. And that was in workshops, and we all heard it. And so that's what I think we need to be thinking about as well. We can answer some of these questions along the way. We can get Wallace to start working on our project. And if something comes up magically that's better, then okay, but we can wait and a new one. If Mike Brady comes in after Region and says, hey, I got an idea, are we going to stop and do that? Matt's got another idea. Sam's got another idea. We're going to stop every time. I just think we're at the point where, for me, enough is enough. And what we're proposing is like standard of care and of engineering for these types of issues. And that's what I think we should pursue. So I'll make a motion after the board members talk.
Yeah, I mean, like I said at the beginning, I mean, I don't think I'm ready to go either way for STEM or gravity. Until we have a little more information on the questions that I posed earlier, and I think that's all as well. And as far as any consensus, I mean, we have a consensus in this room. I know in other meetings we've had, consistency is different, but I think there's enough questions here that I am not comfortable with voting tonight on one or the other. I think going forward with doing the septic locating is a great idea with Wallace. I think doing some potholing, spending some of the money there, I think it's a great idea as well. I think that's getting more information. Then we can also have time to get more information about the equalization and things like that. So I think I am not ready to report right this.
Director Palmer, anything that you'd like to add or direct the general manager?
Just, if I could, just briefly, while I overall agree with Tom, and I continue to hear from constituents at workshops and, you know, at the coffee shop, on walks, wherever, that they are ready to move forward with gravity. It's the flush it and forget it. Having said that, I also feel there are some issues that if we take the next 30 days and in July, make a final decision and use this time to run those to ground to the satisfaction of the board, that's 30 days worth taking. And I agree with Greg, in the meantime, we can authorize Wallace to move forward with the septic identification. That's got to happen no matter what the collection system is. And whatever the recommendation is on the potholing, we move forward on that. That's got to happen regardless as well. So that's where I am.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I disagree with you, Tom. I just think the numbers that we have are huge. And I think if the numbers were half that or a third of that, then I think, yes, I mean, it's not nearly going to affect the community as much as what we're seeing this will affect. And Matt, I take you, yeah, I mean, I understand. I mean, you look at those numbers, and that doesn't include interest, like you were saying, it does not include interest for 30 years. So it's a lot. And for someone on a fixed income, it's really a lot. Even for someone with a decent job, it's really a lot. So I think that consideration is, yes, we've done a lot of work, and yes, I mean, we are close. However, these numbers are massive. And like I said, when I've talked to Julie about it, if someone would give us $30 million, it'd be a much easier book. But we don't have that. We don't have any public financing for this, and hence, I'm just trying to line it.
But we don't know what those numbers are until we look further down the line. And so the numbers could go up. They could go down. But we're going to be stuck in a holding pattern, and the cost will go up as we stay in the holding pattern. And I think whatever the number is, we should let the property owners make their call. I think our job from the outset was to put together the best thing we could put together, something that can be permitted and approved, and what we think is the best option, and then let the property owners decide. And if they vote no, they vote no. And if costs make it such that it's no, then we go away and it falls back, and whatever happens. But we could keep going around and around and never get to the vote. And I think we're at the point where we owe the community to move forward. And a lot of your questions can be answered concurrently and not sequentially as we go along. So
I just think those questions may determine whether I would go for a step purchase. That's fine.
Well, although we hired an engineer to give us the information, and Regen could come in and say they think the cost is this, Well, we hired Walls to do that, given California regulations and construction law, which is by public contract code. And so are we going to say, well, if Region says STEP's going to be cheaper than what Wallace said, then are we just going to, are we going to agree with Region and not the engineer we hired to do this work? And they did the work, and the balancing 30-year cost is less for gravity than for STEP as it is. I think the difference, if I understand right, because we haven't been offered the courtesy of being able to talk to them or see what it is, but if it's multiple decentralized treatment systems, potentially in the road right away, it could be $5 million, and it's not going to work.
I'm not even talking about Polo, I'm just talking about all the equalization. All those are the questions that we have.
The equalization is a good question, Mr. Savage. This equalization is there, I think you said, regardless of what the option is. I mean, we need to have that discussion with Solvang, and I think we should. Well,
yeah, and I started that conversation, and they just really didn't know. Being that STEP has equalization chambers basically on every property, because you have 24-hour capacity on your property, and then you can send it when you can program your pumps to send it, which could eliminate the need for all those equalization chambers. And I posed that question to them, but it was last week, and they kind of looked at me and just, I don't know.
Well, I think also that, I don't know, but the STEP system has a smaller diameter pipe, and it works off different pipes going, so they don't all go on at night.
Correct. Which could help with equalization.
Some could, but yeah.
So that's my thought, and that's why I conveyed it to Solvang, and they were considering it, but didn't have an answer.
We also have equalization that we want to talk to Solvang about. That's about a 90-minute. Carrie, was it a 90-minute travel time from Los Olivos to Solvang? Do I remember that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right, Tom.
Okay. So, and also note that San Ynez doesn't have equalization. So Solvang's going to say you have to have equalization. Then I want to know, well, okay. And then that project that's down on Old Mission and Alamo Picado, are they going to have equalization, or do we just have to have equalization and we're further away? That's going to have more impact to them than we would. So,
right. So it's still a question.
I think we can get a lot of these questions and move this down the line, concurrently. So 72%, one of us is doing this.
So I'm just gonna offer, I walk every morning this town around 6 a.m. And the colder the morning, the worse the smell. And many times I can smell clays or any of these septic guys out here pumping long before I hear it at Barber Coat or any Sam's Place, any of these others pumping out all the sewage. So the idea that this town doesn't have a problem is not true. This town does have a problem. And further, why would we be okay with people coming to visit our town and not having a proper restroom facility? I'm sorry, the porta potties are, and we have homeowners who have septic on life support, and we have an opportunity. We can do something. We can solve this problem for good. Yes, the price tag is huge, but as many of you know, I've been pretty vocal every meeting, and the other board members know, hunting for the money is a key priority. And personally, I fully understand the success of the Prop 218 requires that we have help with the funding. Period, full stop. It cannot be on the backs of this community. So I do agree that we do have some questions that I would like to personally give, I think, direction to general manager to see if we can get some headway on a couple of these three big issues that we've identified. I'm happy, personally, I would have a special meeting if that's what it takes at the end of the month to move forward, but I'm also in agreement with Tom. We need to move forward. We've been on this, and we can do analysis paralysis forever. That is for sure. we'll come to you with public comments over, so just hold tight for a moment, okay? With that, I think, again, like I said, I personally would be open to the idea to have the general manager pursue with Wallace Group, City of Solvang, see if we can get some clarity. I think on the conveyance under the bridge, the pipe hanging on the bridge, yeah, we heard that, yes, they were in favor of that, but it'd be great if they would put it in writing, because that can be a major cost swing one way or the other for us.
Okay, I got another idea then. Well, how about if I just make a motion and then we can have more discussion on it? It's not second. Okay. So I'd like to make a motion that we direct the general manager to bring back a resolution amending our project description, which was vague on the collection, to specifically detail a gravity system for Los Olivos. That would come back on the July meeting, and then maybe the whole board could vote on it. It's not a decision right now. It's direction to bring the resolution back, and then hopefully Mr. Nelson will be here, and then the board can vote on it, or whatever happens. At the same time, then we could start some discussions on the equalization and have Mr. Savage see what we could do on that front. I do like the idea of with some of our savings, have Wallace move forward with some of the work that we talked about. I think we have some budget to do that. We can do that by separate motion. And then lastly, I think we need a motion on the county funding and how we handle that. But I'll just summarize back and make a motion that we direct the general manager to come back with a resolution amending our prior resolution for a final project description that has a gravity system to solving with the discussion in the meantime to get an idea on what the prospects are for equalization. So that's my motion. Approving it, just bringing it back in July.
I just think it's come to a fork in the road and you're asking to go down that fork and I'm not ready to go down that fork. Because you're saying it is for gravity and I am not 100% that that's what I want to do. Objection.
Madam President, before we move forward with discussion, was there a second? Did I miss a second on the motion?
No second yet.
So before we move with discussion, I would recommend to see if there's a second. If there's no second, there's no need for discussion.
Okay. All right. Does anyone who want to make anyone want to second this? Can you repeat the motion again, Tom?
To direct the general manager to bring back to our July meeting a resolution to finalize a project description for a gravity system to Solvang, with discussion with Solvang on equalization to help us with that in July.
Just to be clear, we're talking about gravity collection and conveyance.
We're talking about gravity collection. I think there's more work that Wallace needs to do on the transmission as to whether or not gravity or force main. I don't think they have that. That's another thing they have to do that work. And that's the next step from 30 to 60.
Do we have a second? Hearing none, I think the motion dies. I would like to submit direction for general manager to a couple of things. One is come back with information about the equalization. And hopefully we can get a meeting with City Solvang to further discuss that. I would really like to see something from Public Works in writing about the hanging over the bridge under the bridge, so that we can nail that one down. And, I think we also need to, as part of this discussion, we need to decide how we want to handle the funding option that the county has presented us.
Well, what's the point? I mean, without moving forward with it. So what's the point? Are we gonna do
Well,
that? Are we gonna do that?
So I feel, for sure, I think 30 days to just get a little more clarity, and we put this on the agenda for the July meeting, for both on the collection system. But meanwhile, we still have to keep moving forward on all these other fronts, and one of them is on the funding. And how we can handle that.
Would it make sense to continue the item to July, or do we need to re-agendize it? I don't know.
It's your choice. Whatever the board's desire is, you accomplish the same thing. If you want to see this item again on the next agenda, you can either continue this one and not provide any motions or direction, or you can make a motion to re-agendize it and provide any other direction to the general manager regarding any work that Wallace Group may be doing, which was discussed.
So we can make a motion to enter a contract with Wallace to do the existing septic location and doing a certain amount of money for potholing.
That's in the scope already, right?
So I would like specific direction to move them forward though, just to be clear.
Okay.
So you do have to do something or else.
Okay.
I like that direction.
Yeah.
That's my,
All right, so I think we are hearing from the other board members, yes, we would like for you to go ahead and get with Wall Street. Really, the question is this as a board, is everybody, would everybody be able, ready to make a decision by July, the July meeting? Or are we gonna just continue to kick it down the road? So the answer is, well, I'm not sure, and we're gonna continue to kick.
Stop spending money.
Exactly.
Yes to July for me.
Yes to July for me.
Well, I offered a yes for July to have it ready to go a month sooner. There was no second, so I don't hear yes for July.
but we have to gather more information. And yeah,
Well, and you're not gonna have that by July.
we should have hopefully some developments in those 2 yards. That's what I hope. Yeah.
Can we?
And then are we gonna ask the county to move forward with the money? Is the county gonna say, yeah, here's $250, go ahead and chase more leads with the $250, or? I mean, we told them we needed the $1 million to pick a solution and move forward, so until we do that, well, we probably should ask for the money. I don't know if Mr. Savage has any insight on how they would react to that.
Madam President, if I may,
Yes.
and I just want to make sure that the board understands just the fact that you would direct the general manager to put something on the next agenda, let's say something aligned with what the director was proposing, a revised resolution to redefine the project or finalize defining the project, doesn't mean that the vote is going to pass it. It'll give you an opportunity to discuss it. And if for whatever reasons in the next 30 days, majority of the board doesn't feel like that's the direction you want to head, then you simply don't vote for that. On the other hand, if the majority of you decide that, yeah, this is the way we want to move, then you have an opportunity to adopt the resolution and move forward with the project. In other words, by placing it on the, or directing the general manager to place it on the agenda for next meeting, it doesn't commit you to voting yes on it. It just directs the manager to do a task. It's an item that will be on the agenda, and the item will live or die however the board wishes it to proceed. Just something that I wanted to highlight for you.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
Well, based on that, Director Fayram, do you want to make the motion again?
Council, so is that motion to reconsider or, well, no, there was, it wasn't.
I think,
okay.
yeah,
I will put my original motion back on the table.
The first motion died for lack of second. Technically speaking, the motion should probably come from somebody other than the original motion maker.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to bring back the project description as with the gravity, help me out here, with gravity as the option for consideration at the July meeting.
And can we add to the motion?
That's very good with me.
Lisa, do you want to add anything about the, oh gosh, thank you, equalization question?
Yes, along with clarity on the solving requirements for equalization. Does that satisfy it?
Second. Oh.
So here's what I think I heard. I was trying to type as fast as I could. So Director Palmer is motioning to bring back the project description with gravity as the selected option for collection, along with clarity regarding solving the equalization approach to the July meeting. That's what I heard. That's her motion.
Okay, and we have a second.
Yes.
Okay, so this is a roll call.
Yes. Second, please. All right. Roll call. Yeah. So Director Palmer.
Aye.
Director Fayram. Aye. Director Parks. Nay. Director Kennedy.
Aye. Okay. Is there any from the board, any further direction that you would like to provide to the general manager in preparation for this?
Well, in light of that motion, well, we could do a couple of things. We could then make a motion to bring the county funding option back for consideration in July, or you could just put it on the agenda as president too. So, what's your preference?
We'll definitely want to put it on the agenda, but I do think we should. If there's any thoughts about the county's proposal for funding, any direction that we want to give to the general manager in preparation for the July meeting for that item, this would be a great opportunity to do that. Let's make sure he's got it.
And once again, we can't get anywhere until we complete the design and the other work items. So there's only one way, there's only one path for that right now. And thankfully the county has come in and offered options. It's a partial grant and a partial loan, but in the absence of that, we are at a sense. So I'll just make a motion to bring back in the July meeting consideration the county funding options that Mr. Savage showed us in his staff.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I'll second that.
Okay.
All right, so we have
Roll call.
yes. Yes, roll call.
Okay. Director Fayram. Aye. Director Kennedy.
Aye.
Director Parks. Aye. Director Palmer.
Aye.
Okay, do you have enough information? Do you have enough guidance to move forward?
back and look.
You want to shoot us?
Is that an option?
Yes.
Go back real quick. Sorry. Yes, I have sufficient. I think it's fine. So just to make sure people fully understand, I may or may not be able to get an answer regarding equalization. I'll do my darndest, but you know, takes meetings. But I'll do what I can.
The board does with that.
Mr. Savage, are you clear on the scope of work for Wallace moving forward? Did we get direction from the board on that?
We didn't get a motion yet on that, but I assume they were gonna cover that separately.
All right.
You can just provide direction to me to authorize them to move forward with those two because it's already in their scope. We just haven't given it.
Yeah, yes, please.
Council, you're okay with that? Let me make sure, right?
Yes, I
It's
am.
already part of their scope. We'll just authorize them
yes, I
to
am.
work out.
Understood. Yep. We're fine. And Madam President, once this item is over, I would like to have a minute. Once we conclude with item 8, I would like a minute of your time, of the board's time.
Okay. All right.
One question.
Yes.
Can we request any contact regional audit board as far as looking at our well water quality and to see if that quality of water, if indeed it's consistent with what we encounter if we do the trenching, if that can be pumped directly into the creek?
Yes, well, it's just that, right? It seems like that's not a big, we have the data.
Well, they know what needs to be, the quality of the water, what needs to be.
Because the determination, if it's a low threat or, I think you mentioned the low threat.
That's why I was thinking, they would know better than Wallace as far as the.
Well, yeah.
Put Wallace
In charge of getting the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they're the ones who determine, I believe.
Yeah, but, sorry, speak up. The appropriate answer.
Yes, go ahead, because this is a direction to general management, so.
Typically when we have someone coming to us for a permit, that the UFO permittee would do that work and then present it to us as opposed to us doing the analysis. That makes sense. So yeah, we would be looking to your staff to whether that's contracted out work or in-house.
So we can submit
Collecting the information.
water sample results to them and make or something like that one.
What I might suggest is your board just give direction to staff to work with the water board on this topic. Wallace Group would ultimately, or our final construction contractor, whoever they may be, probably the Wallace Group would be doing PM, but it would be a construction group that would submit the actual permit request on our behalf. So I can work with them in the interim to try and sort some of the details out.
But at least let's do one for, so I've got to know what to work for.
Yeah.
Falls well within our limits. Just information.
So the way I'm wording this is what I think I'm hearing, direction staff to work with the water board to determine water quality issues related to discharge into the creek.
Yes, thank you. Anything else from the board? Any other questions or information or direction for general management? Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Martin, who has wanted to, something on the, before we left item 8. Yes?
So the item 8 is over, correct? We're done.
Yes.
What the staff would like to propose to the board is to add an urgency item to the agenda at this point in time. The Brown Act allows that if certain findings can be made, and those findings are that the information that gives rise to this item was received by staff after the agenda was posted, which it was, and that the item has certain amount of urgency or consequence to the district, which that's a decision that the board would need to make, and we'll describe in a second. And that waiting till the next meeting would not be, basically would defeat the purpose of moving forward with the item. And those things are in place. We have received a request from the coalition, water coalition partners. Sonoma Water is submitting a comment letter opposing a DWR Dam Safety and Climate Resilience Local Assistance Program. According to that, this program would favor vulnerable communities, which would, as far as bonding is concerned, the significance to that to us is that our district area does not meet that criteria. As explained earlier by General Manager, this is not a vulnerable community or a low-income community, etc. It's not eligible. So Sonoma is requesting letters of support or opposition, support for that position, opposition to the proposed Dam Safety and Climate Resilience Local Assistance Program. It is a two-step process. First of all, the board would have to vote unanimously, because not all of you are here. You need a supermajority, and in this instance, it would need 4 votes to put the item on the agenda based on the findings and on the explanation that I provided. Once that happens, if the vote is affirmative to add the item to the agenda on an urgency basis, then we could put it on the bottom of the agenda. And after, I think, the next item, which is, I think, the election resolution, the board could contemplate the item and direct us to either sign the letter or not sign the letter. It's a template letter that's available. With that, I'm ready to answer any questions.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, we first need to make a motion to agendize this particular item.
To add it to the agenda. That's correct. Yeah.
To add to the agenda, and then we would need all 4 members to vote yes in order to advance forward on it.
And also to see if there's public comment on it.
Yeah, okay. But we would have that if we do that, then the agenda item would fall after item 9.
That's right.
And we would
just add it as number 10. Right, exactly.
Okay. And we would take public comment at that time, like I said, just like any regular agenda item.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to make a motion on this? Agendize. So, we have more.
Yeah, could you help me with how the motion should read?
A motion based on the findings outlined by the General Counsel, move to add this item as an urgency item to the agenda.
Okay, I'll make a motion to add the urgency item, as detailed by General Counsel.
Okay, we have a first and a second. We'll do a roll call.
Yeah. Director Bayram.
Aye.
Director Parks. Director Palmer. Director Palmer.
You are muted, Director Palmer.
Sorry. I. Did you hear me?
That was an aye.
Okay. Director Kennedy?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll have this as item 10 on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, moving on, we have item 9 on the agenda, consideration of resolution. Yes. Resolutions 2602 and 2603 regarding LOCSD Board of Director elections on November 3rd, 2026.
Maybe, Chair, really briefly, just to kind of set the stage on this one. Okay, so as we often do with elections, your board at this time of year, when there's an election coming up, considers whether or not to consolidate with the county. So what that essentially does is it saves us money because the county handles the whole process and we're a fraction of the total cost. The alternative is that we run our own election, bear the entire cost, and run the entire process, which I would highly recommend against. So Resolution 2602 authorizes that consolidation. It's in line with what the county has requested. All of this is attached to the item itself, as well as importantly for those who might want to part of the consolidated election meeting, run for office, dates related to all that stuff are listed there. Resolution 2603 speaks to qualifications of candidates and how many words they can put in their qualification statement. Who pays for their qualification statement. In our case, we put the entire burden on the candidate, and we limit the number of words they can use. So they can't have pages and pages of candidate statements, they have to keep it brief. To make it clear exactly what we're talking about, the current board, there's 5 members. Directors Kennedy, Parks, and Palmer are all up for re-election if they choose to run again in November. The Tom Nelson, and Director Fairham were elected in last election, so their terms end in 2028. So for this coming up election, November 3rd, 2026, we will have 3 vacancies. They are large vacancies. You have to be a registered voter within the district. So that is what needs to happen. I would request a specific motion be made. It's outlined directly in the agenda. Adopt the 2 resolutions, direct the general manager acting in his capacity as board secretary when necessary to file all this basically with the county as required. The board secretary bit is important.
You can do it in one motion.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Do you have any public comment on item 9? Did you want to? No. You're on the next one. The new one. Okay. All right. Any other? Okay. Hearing no public comment, can motion?
This is standard. We've done this before, so I'll make a motion. We adopt resolution 2602 and 2603 and direct the general manager acting in his capacity as board secretary when necessary to file 2026 election related materials with the county of Santa Barbara as required.
Second. First and second.
Director Fairham? Director Parks? Aye. Director Palmer?
Aye.
Director Kennedy?
Aye. All right. Next item is our urgency item. Do you have information on this? If you think?
All right. So as was outlined by council, an email came in requesting support. You know, this is not a body that maintains kind of a policy document around what we're going to pursue from a legislative or political perspective. Instead, they come up one by one like this. We've addressed some of them, for instance, with prior resolutions to allow the president to vote in CSDA elections on your behalf or LAFCO elections, but we don't have this particular area where something has come before us that is happening kind of at the state level. You haven't authorized anybody to speak on your behalf, but you don't have a legislative platform that I can say, well, it's in line with this legislative platform, so therefore I can support it or not. We haven't done that. We don't need to do it, I don't think, because it's come up very early. So this is an email that came in earlier today that the board has decided to add to the agenda. I'll just share the email as it came in. So you can read it. I unfortunately did not have time today to do other things to really dig into it much, so I can't offer much background. But here, I'll share it with you so you and the public can see it together. I can make this a little bigger, I think, so when it comes up and it's too small, don't flip out on me. Oops. I can find the button to make that bigger. Put it this way. Let me shrink this screen down. Hold on just a second. It's gonna be some moving around of things just to be able to fit everything. Sorry, just a second. All right. All right. Slightly trimmed there on the left. This is a little wider. Let's see, we want to show that way. There we go. So as you can see, there's a coalition out there related to Prop 4. Proposition 4 is the item that the general public voted on to allocate funds to infrastructure projects. And so at the county or at the state level, rather, they're trying to figure out what criteria they're going to use, right, to allocate these funds. Much like the SRF program, right? They decide on what the criteria are, and then they allocate funds accordingly. So this is the email related to basically establishing the criteria, and that's the totality of it. Sorry, I can't offer more. Maybe council can, but I suspect not.
I don't have anything else to add other than what's in the email. I also have not had any time to do any research onto this or provide anything other than what is written in front of you.
Well, I think if I could, there is a suggested letter attached that was forwarded. I mean, it's from Sonoma, but it was forwarded by IRWIM, the IRWIM partners, giving it, an opportunity, asking for.
So there was an attachment?
Yes. So there's
no attachment in the email that I had.
Okay, let me see if I find something with an attachment. Sorry, doing this on the fly, doing my best.
Understood. I just think if it's an opportunity for us to weigh in to maximize our eligibility for any future funding, that we should be doing that on behalf of our constituents. And we just got it this morning. It's due tomorrow. So sorry it came this way, but.
Okay, here's which there's attachments here.
It's three. One of them is the Word document.
The Word document. Okay. All right. Let me download it real quick. Sorry. It doesn't fly.
Damn.
If I can scroll, I'll agree that I'll pick who it's going to. It's going, as you can see, the person in Sacramento. Comments on dam safety and climate resilience, local systems draft program, guidelines, proposals, so on and so forth. So I'm not going to read this. I'll just pause for a minute.
So do I understand this then? The gist of the comment is maybe our concern has been is that right now the state is just looking at that, and there are other worthy recipients, and I understand that process and don't have an issue with it until it becomes exclusive on the funding. So if that's what this is basically saying, is open it up to more than just disadvantaged communities, I think we should submit this. It sounds like they teed it up for us. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think they teed it up readily.
I think it really comes down to this paragraph that is now kind of this paragraph here, we suggest, this is what we're really suggesting.
Right, co-equal beneficiaries.
Yeah, so yeah, it can be, like, I know, Anna Marie.
You want to do public comment? You want
Yes,
to take public
yes.
comment? Okay, yeah, you want me to leave this up? You want to take it down?
I leave it up for the
Okay,
moment,
that's
sure.
fine.
Well, excuse me, it would have been great if this handout had been made available at the beginning of the meeting so that everyone could actually look at it, rather than just having it put up on the screen. It does sound, though, that this is something that you all should vote to move forward with, based upon the language they are proposing. In future, though, if there is something that is put on the agenda after your agenda has gone out, we should have a piece of paper available for us to take a look at what that actually says. And you know what? You all should actually have your entire agenda packet in the binder so that everyone can read through it, because not everyone actually, it has, anything by email, and may not actually see anything more than just the agenda at the post office. So those are my comments.
Any other public comment on this item? Okay, guys, do we, is it just general, is it just direction you need to make a motion on it, what you'd like to do?
Let's get reporting from council. Council, the question is, if the board wants to move this forward, is it approve and direct the president to sign and submit? What would be the?
Yeah, just a motion to submit the template letter customized to our, obviously to the district, and authorize either the general manager or the board president to sign it.
So moved.
I'd like something a little more than so moved. If council wants to suggest.
Let me repeat it. Just motion to authorize the general manager to submit the template letter customized to reflect the district as the author, and authorize the general manager to execute it on behalf of the district. Is that, Director Palmer, is that?
Yeah, yes.
What you want to move?
So moved again. Thank you, Mark.
Second.
Yeah.
Roll call vote. Director Palmer.
Aye.
Director Fayram.
Aye.
Director Parks.
Aye.
Director Kennedy.
Aye, and then we will post this on the website. Okay, perfect. Okay, moving on. Next item on the agenda, now number 11, reports, subcommittee reports. We've nobody met to. Okay. Hearing, yeah, all right, doesn't sound like we have any subcommittee reports. General manager and district engineer comments?
Yeah, just a couple of real quick ones. Sorry, I've got to get over to that one. But I mean, all right, so very quickly, just, we're going to pay a lot of bills based on prior approvals, and the bills from April, because I was out of convenient access to the county systems, those also will be paid. So we currently show about $457,000 in the bank, but a big chunk of that's going to go away. So that number will go down significantly. Still allows the 150 that I was talking about before. So we'll close the books and we'll find out exactly how we carried into 2026, 27. As always, there's detailed sheets in there about sheets, that sort of stuff. If somebody wants to dig into it, these are all posted online. I am about ready to do is, remember some months ago, your board authorized me to work with the Corps of Engineers related to WRDA. So they finally responded last week. So I've got some work to do there. Often the Corps comes through the communities here during the summer when the new colonel is assigned. We'll work to try and get them to come through because it might help our case. Got a couple more PRAs, those are now complete. Just remind everybody that June is another quarterly report month. So I anticipate still more hours this month, quite a few. And as always, I kind of at the bottom of it list my priorities, and they haven't changed really much. General admin stuff, the things we have to do. Still focused on financing, grants, wall street design, and all the things that we talked about related to 30, 60, 90, equalization tanks, all that fall under that. Adjustment engineering options is currently number 4, followed by the city solving contract based on an earlier comment. I'll flip those last 2 to reflect, I think, what your board is looking for me to work on. Yeah, and then just because it's come up a number of times over the last few weeks, I did include information related to the SRF program at the end here. If somebody wants to see what the full comprehensive list of everybody applied for funds through that program looks like, their scores, you can see where we scored, where we didn't score. Again, it's over 2 basic categories, right? Construction planning, they have a fundable cutoff list. We are below that cutoff list. Even if we'd gotten DAC, disadvantaged community points, I don't think we would have made the cutoff. So it's unfortunate. We just don't score well against those criteria. But for anybody who wants it, not just the link, but the actual list is at the end of this document. I think that's the last thing here. Let me look real quick. Sorry. Yeah, that's it. So those were my comments.
Next item on the agenda, director comments.
I just had one, partially response to Mr. Loudon's question about the state. I have been working aggressively with Senator Lamone and Assemblymember Hart's office on the funding, not only of the work we're trying to do now, but the ultimate capital costs. They suggested pulling, after the state budget's done, pulling together a meeting and looking at how the state could help us in the future. So haven't done anything, but we have been engaging them. So just so you know, it hasn't been nothing going on there. You don't hear it day to day, but it's going on. That's
Director Palmer, any comments?
Nothing more from me. Thank you.
I think it was no.
No, thank you. Okay. All right. I have none other than, we will continue pressing every avenue possible for funding. All right, with that, can we get how about an adjournment?
I'll adjourn. I'd like to thank the regional board staff for being here and for following us. I'll be adjourning at 8:40.
All right, you have just the second. Is we have to roll on this?
I think you're okay.
All right, all in favor of adjourn, this room at 8:40? Aye. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you guys. Thanks, Martin.
If you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to the general manager.